Alimony is support for one spouse or the other, and it's really a simple equation. It's the need of one spouse versus the ability of the other spouse to pay. And it's numbers, but it also has a lot to do with the length of the marriage. So the Florida statute has changed in that it has specifically defined the terms of the length of a marriage and what kind of alimony you're entitled to. And our job is to go in and determine what your need is as a spouse and what your other spouse's need is in terms of their ability to pay. So we have to evaluate, what are your expenses? What is your living expenses? What are your eating expenses? What are your gas, your travel, your bills, your cellular phone? Those are your needs. Now, the ability to pay is your spouse's income minus those necessary and reasonable expenses. And whatever's left over, that's the pot that alimony is going to come from. And whether or not you're entitled to it is the next question. And whether or not your marriage, the length of your marriage. Do you have a long-term marriage in which you've been a supportive spouse? And how has your career been affected by the marriage? Or maybe your child-rearing duties. So the thing about alimony in essence is that it becomes very complicated, but it's important that at the beginning of the process you sit down and are realistic about your need versus your spouse's ability to pay, so that you're not dreaming up a number that isn't there to get.
And then what happens is the IRS has standards for alimony. It has to be pursuant to a court order. It has to have certain language in it that says that the alimony terminates upon death or remarriage. Then what happens is the payor, the person who's paying the other person the alimony, gets to deduct it from their income tax, and the payee, the person who's getting the money, has to declare it as income. One of the interesting things, or one of the important things to know, is that the payor's tax bracket can in fact go down because they are paying money to the spouse, and then the spouse has a different lower tax bracket. So it helps the payor to pay it, lowers their tax bracket, and gives them a real big chunk of tax deduction. We have formulas and we have programs that show dollar for dollar, the payor does not pay. The payee gets the dollar, but the payor gets a great benefit, and they may not end up paying an entire dollar. And in the proper cases, which we've been talking about, I have a forensic. So we go over different scenarios, paying for this, paying for that, getting this much money, getting this asset that throws off this amount of interest, so that you take into consideration all forms of income. It can be child support, alimony, wages, commissions, bonuses, dividends and interest from assets that in fact are owned or that you get pursuant to the divorce process. So you add back in the interest and dividends that you will be getting.